So everyone's doing these 24 in 2024 lists, but how about we make it queer? G'day folks, Wren here, and today I'm going to recommend 24 books that I think you should read in 2024, and all of them are queer. First up, sorry if you can hear the fan, it's currently 30 degrees, I live in Australia, the fan has to stay on, otherwise I will die. Also, for context, if you didn't know, I'm a very queer individual. I am a non-binary, biromantic individual. So, these 24 books that I'm going to recommend to you, yes, you should read them any time of the year, any time of the decade, you should just read them, because they're all good. For various different reasons, I did try and cover as many queer identities as I could, but I did mainly stick with gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and asexual, and some non-binary as well. So these are in no particular order whatsoever. These were just written down as I thought of them, in all honesty. So I'm not saying some are better than others, this is just a list. Now that I've waffled on for about 5 minutes, which hopefully I can edit that down because, oh boy, let's start off with the first one, shall we? The first book I'm going to recommend is Ghostwood Song by Erica Waters. This is such a vibes book and it's great. Hauntingly beautiful is definitely what I would describe this as. The queer identity that is mainly featured in this is bisexual representation, because our main character is bisexual, and that is talked about on page. We see some of her relationships that she's either in or has been in, and she talks about that, and it's all great. I did love the discussion of bisexuality in this book, thought it was great. But this is such an interesting book. It is a YA horror? We could call it a horror. It's definitely got some creepy vibes because this young girl has inherited this ability to see ghosts from her dad. And the way that they kind of commune with the dead is through music. There is so much musical vibes in this, and it was great. It made me want to listen to bluegrass music. Never thought that would be a thing, but that's what this book did. And then when our main character's brother is accused of murder, she wants to figure out what actually happened and help her brother. So she wants to actively call on the spirit of the deceased person to help her clear her brother's name. Things get very messy, interesting situations happen, but it is such a great book. Number 2 is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. If you've watched any of my videos, you might know that this was my favourite book of 2023. It's amazing, I love it. The queer identity in this is non-binary. Our main character, the way that they describe their gender identity was amazing and fascinating. This was the first book I ever started underlining because I was so blown away with the descriptions. So the way that this main character describes their gender, it's kind of to do with their occupation in a way, because they are a soldier. And then there was this whole like separate class of these types of warriors, and they would all use kind of neutral pronouns for each other, and like they themselves had their own particular pronouns and titles that were used just for those soldiers. It was absolutely fascinating. So in this book, again, we have the hauntingly beautiful writing and vibe. It's great. So our main character receives notice from their friends to say that one of them is very ill. So they go to try and like comfort them, see what they can do, just see them before the worst happens. But when they get there, they realize something is up with this place. The animals around this manor are acting really strangely, in particular the rabbits. They just stare at you and like kind of hobble towards you. It's very creepy, I love it. The young woman that is sick, she's very interestingly sick, is the best way I can put that without giving spoilers. This is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling, which was by Edgar Allan Poe. You don't have to read that to enjoy this. I think this is just such a well-written novel that like everyone should go read it. Coming in at number 3, is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. So this is a YA dystopian horror, but the main queer identities in this are a trans man, main character, and gay characters, a lot of other side characters that are queer in many different ways, but we do definitely follow our trans man main character the most and his kind of journey with being trans in this particular environment. So in this, it is very difficult to explain. So there's a cult, basically, which this young guy was a part of, and he was actually a pretty key player in that cult, unwillingly. He doesn't want to be a part of it, so he actually runs away. When he's out, like, in the wilds, basically, he meets a bunch of other teenagers and they kind of take him in. They're all trying to, like, be safe. The group of teenagers, they have taken refuge in a queer community centre. Like, that's great. If at the end of the world there is a queer community centre still standing, that's where I'm gonna survive. So I loved that, like, that was a part of the story as well, and it was all very much about acceptance. We then get a lot of stuff with the cult trying to take this guy back, and the cult is not accepting of his transness, but his boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, complicated partner was. And I annoyingly liked that, because I was shipping this guy with someone else, and then his partner came along and I was like, don't make me like you, you're part of a cult. But there is a lot of horror vibes in this as well, with these almost like creatures. Very descriptive, creepy stuff happens with the kind of creatures that are coming out of this world. It's fascinating and it's great, and one of our love interests is also autistic, and that gets explored really well in this as well, and I really, really appreciated that. But it's an interesting time, and it's really cool to see more queer characters in horrors. At number 4, we have The Boy From The Mish by Gary Lonesborough. This is a YA contemporary, and this is actually an Australian author, which is great. It is a First Nations Australian author, but this is such a good book. The main queer identity we focus on here is gay. We have 2 teen boys that get to know each other over a summer and fall for one another. That's honestly the entire plot of this. It is just a very sweet and simple romance, but it deals with a lot of intense issues as well. We're obviously dealing with a lot of racism, with it being about 2 Indigenous boys in Australia. It's not always great. So they do have to deal with that a little bit, especially in regards to the police, because it is just about these 2 boys. These 2 boys living a simple life. One of the boys comes to stay with the other boy's family for the summer holidays, which is over Christmas for here in Australia, and they have to share a room because there's only so many rooms in the house. So they get to know each other really well throughout this time. It's just these boys figuring out that they do like each other, and then what that means for living in Australia. So one of the boys coming out to his friends and talking to them about it and having a little bit of backlash maybe. I will say there is a forced outing in this. If that is a problem for you, it happens in here. It's okay. Like, the characters are okay. Nothing too particularly violent happens to them, but honestly, at the end of the day, it's just these 2 boys having the softest, sweetest romance that ever did romance. At number 5, we have Peter Darling by Austen Chant. This is a Peter Pan retelling, and the queer identity we're focusing on here is a trans man, and then also a gay relationship. Obviously, this is a Peter Pan retelling, and it is one of my favorite books of all time. And in this, we are following a Peter who isn't allowed to be Peter in the real world, so he decides to go back to Neverland where he can be Peter. And when he's there, he definitely does become a bit of a darker Peter than we're used to, although we really shouldn't be in this day and age, because we all know that Peter Pan was actually super dark. And in this, it really does explore some of that, but the way it does it and the way it explains this particular world of Neverland, super interesting. But it is really great to be able to have this kind of escape for a trans person to be like, okay, I have this place where I can be myself. And that in itself was beautiful. Then we also have the relationship between Peter Pan and Captain Hook. I love it. It was so good. I love their relationship. It was honestly beautiful. And it was really interesting to see them kind of reconcile, you know, all of the fights that they had the last time Peter was in Neverland, and to see them kind of like grow as characters and learn to kind of lean on each other and also like find strength within each other. I love having queer characters in fairy tale retellings. Then at number 6, we have Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. This is a graphic memoir, and the queer identities in this are slightly complicated because there are several, and it is a exploration of gender and sexuality, and it is about Maya going through their life. In different parts of their life they might identify in particular ways, but as they grow older and start to understand who they are as a person, that also changes, and that's totally acceptable, by the way. Okay, so on the back here it does say that Maya identifies as non-binary and asexual. It's such a hard-hitting graphic novel. The art is also beautiful. Oh, I need to show my favourite page. In high school, I began to theorize that I had been born with 2 half souls, one female and one male. Is that not beautiful? So the art in this is absolutely fabulous. And it is just about Maya discovering who they are from when they were a young child to early 20s, I believe. And we just get to see them living their life. It's a really interesting exploration through just discovering your gender and how honestly traumatizing that can be. Maya goes through a lot of traumatizing experiences. Things can be really upsetting when they happen to you, and they're a, you know, natural biological thing, and then it happens to you and it is honestly very dysphoric. So Maya goes through a lot of that. I am trying to use air pronouns correctly. I don't know if I am. I'm not particularly well versed in pronouncing neo-pronouns. Very sorry for that. But this is a fascinating book. And number 7, we have Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, because of course I had to put this book in here. So this is a YA paranormal urban fantasy book. The main queer identities in this are a trans man and a gay relationship, some other background queer identities as well, but those are the main 2 that we focus on. In this we have a lot of Latinx culture, obviously, but our main character is wanting to explore the magic that is in their family. His family is like, well, you should do this gendered magic. But he's like, no, I need to do this gendered magic. His dad doesn't agree, so he's like, screw you, Dad, I'm gonna do that magic anyways. And he does. And that magic helps him to connect to a recently deceased soul. So he is now able to kind of commune with the dead. And in doing that, he kind of uncovers this ritual that is kind of taking place where a lot of people are being killed, and he's helping the ghost that he is now bound to. He's helping him to figure out what happened to him and how he's involved in this plot and all this kind of stuff. Oh, it's such a good book, and it was just such a beautiful way to experience this kind of trans issue of, you know, not fitting in with your family and your family deciding one thing for you, but, you know, you knowing that that's not the path for you. It was a really interesting way to showcase that. Everyone go read it if you haven't already, and if you have, go reread it. At number 8, we have The Remaking of Corman Whale by Rowan Parrish. One of my favourite books of all time. This is a comfort read for me. So this is a adult contemporary romance, and the main queer identity in this is a gay main character and his gay love interest. There's also a gay side character. So in this we are following this guy who comes back to his hometown, and he takes over his family's bakery. And he turns it into his own thing. It's very successful, and there is this guy that keeps coming to the bakery. Our main character is very just like besotted with him, and then it's about these 2 entering into a relationship. Our love interest has autism. Just The exploration of autism in this book made my heart so happy. Just the way our main character is like, your brain is beautiful. The way you see the world is beautiful. Like, that was so lovely. And so there is a lot of stuff about baking in this, because obviously it's set in a bakery, it's very cute, but it's just such a beautifully written novel, and about these two guys just falling so in love with each other in the softest and sweetest way. At number 9, we have The Queen of Eoflaria by Effie Calvin. This is a fantasy. The main queer identity in this is lesbian and bisexual, but we are following a female-female relationship. So in this book, you know, we have two kingdoms, and they are going to let their children get married to help an alliance. But what happens is one of those children actually dies. So to keep that contract alive, this family's like, well, we've got a daughter, so, you know, she can go marry your princess. So that's what happens. It is about just these two girls, like, reluctantly falling in love, because, like, these are two strangers. You know, they did not expect this to happen. It was a very last minute decision because the brother died very suddenly. They're both kind of grieving for this lost man in their life, while also trying to form this new relationship with each other, even though they're very much strangers. I also really love this world, because there are some really interesting religious systems happening, because there are a lot of gods, and there are a lot of kind of places of worship for these particular gods, and it's very interesting. I find it fantasy very difficult to get into sometimes, so this was really easy for me to follow, and I loved it, and the relationship was very cute. At number 10, we have Bedazzled by Ryan Lasala. This is a YA contemporary, and the main queer identities in this is gay and bisexual, but we are following a male-male romance. This boy is a cosplayer, and he goes to this convention, but there is a competition that is happening there. This competition, like, very much think Project Runway, but for cosplay, and that's what's happening here. And so in this competition, he has to create a whole new cosplay. It's a very, like, kind of intense situation, especially when his ex-boyfriend is also there. You know, these two, we keep going kind of back and forth with a lot of flashbacks from, you know, when they were together, but a lot of things happen during this competition, especially when they have to end up working together. Like, I just connected so much with our main character, and I felt for him, and I just wanted to, like, hug him and be like, it's okay, you're okay. It was a little heartbreaking, but so good. At number 11, we have You Better Be Lightning by Andrea someone. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. This is a poetry collection, and in this, the main queer identity is lesbian. This is a absolutely phenomenal poetry collection. It was so beautifully done. The poems were so, I don't want to say brutal, but that's kind of the word that's coming to mind. Like, they're powerful. That's the word. They're so powerful. Every poem was just so beautifully written and in really interesting ways, but very clearly telling a story. And it never felt, you know, the author was trying to use flowery writing just to make it sound better. Like, that never happened. All of the poems flowed really well. You know, there is this undercurrent of, you know, these queer women and these, you know, these relationships between women, and in beautiful ways, and, you know, just exploring, like, female sexuality, and it was beautiful. At number 12, we have Spectre Inspectors by Bowen McCurdy and Caitlin Musto. This is a graphic novel. The main queer identities in this is lesbian. So we have a female-female relationship in this, and the thing I really love about this is that it's paranormal investigators, and they are investigating this particular haunted place when one of our female characters gets possessed. And then it's just like her girlfriend trying to, like, save her. And we have some beautiful found family moments within this crew. I love the crew, they're adorable. So I really enjoyed the art. I love this kind of art style. It was really good. We also get within this, one of our characters can see ghosts. So that kind of helps with this whole investigation thing. It was a really interesting story. I love all of these characters. They're very sweet. It's really good to get like queer characters in these kind of situations. You know, the queers don't die in this one, basically. At number 13, we have Out of the Blue by Jason June. This is a YA, but like older YA. This is on like the cusp of young adult and adult, and it is a paranormal romance, I guess you could call it. But the main queer identities in this are non-binary and gay. So we are following a relationship with a male character and a non-binary character. This is about a mer person in the kind of culture of merfolk. In their kind of coming of age ritual, a mer person has to go up on Earth, you know, out of the blue, and they get legs, and then they spend a month on land, and while they're there, their task is to help a human. If they don't help a human within that month, then they don't get to return to the ocean. But if they do help a human in that month, then they get to return to the blue and become one of the elders. And so in this, our Murph person comes on shore and is like, wow, I hate this, which was such an interesting take. When they first arrive on land, they're greeted by their lifeguard. So the lifeguard there, he's just gotten broken up with by his boyfriend. He's feeling really awful about himself, and then he thinks he's going to save this guy, and he's like, wow, you're super attractive. Turns out not a guy, it's a non-binary person, but they figured that out later. What happens is, within crazy circumstance, these two end up in a fake relationship because our mer person is like, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do to help you? And our guy's like, well, you could pretend to be my boyfriend so that I could make my ex-boyfriend super jealous. And then obviously throughout this, our mer person is like, you know what, I don't like the term boyfriend, can it just be partner? And there's just some really good commentary on gender, and just done in such a like simple and respectful way, but also like delving deep into those kind of conversations, which I loved. But it was such a great conversation on being non-binary, and especially coming from a mer person who, you know, they haven't experienced any of these stupid gendered things before. Like in the ocean, it's kind of a species thing that all merfolk are kind of non-binary, although some of them do have preferences. Underwater, they don't have like gendered clothing or like gendered accessories or gendered cars or gendered anything. So it was really interesting to see our mer person just seeing all of those for the first time and realizing like how messed up society is because of all the gendered stuff that we have. Coming in at number 14 is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by someone, and I'm so sorry I can't remember the name. This is a graphic novel, and the main queer identity here is lesbian. So we are following a female-female relationship, and there is also many other background queer characters. We are mainly following this one female character and her girlfriend. She is kind of really struggling with the fact that she loves her girlfriend, but her girlfriend doesn't always love her, and how complicated that is when you're kind of the only one in that relationship. You're the only one putting in that work. She comes to realize that, yeah, her girlfriend isn't on the same level with her with this relationship. There's a bit of like loving yourself enough to know that you deserve better. Like, that is such a hard lesson to learn, but our main character does, and that was beautiful. It was a really like hard-hitting graphic novel in a really unexpected way. It's a really good time, despite how heartbreaking it is. At number 15, we have Kogitsune by Jia Jia Lake. This is a like bind-up collection of like these 3 novellas. One novella, one novel, and then another novella. So like 2 novellas and a novel. This is a bind-up of those. But mainly talking about Kogitsune here, which is the first one. So this is a adult, like, historical fantasy. The main queer identity in this is gay. We are following a male-male relationship. So in this is about a kitsune. This particular kitsune is kind of trying to like break away from their father, and they have to stay in the forest. They're kind of like a guardian in a way of the forest, but they have to stay in the forest and kind of stay away from humans. But they end up meeting a human boy, and these two boys really hit it off. They become really close friends. There starts to be something more happening between them, and then we have a bit of a time jump, which usually I hate, but this one I was okay with, surprisingly. But then, you know, we come back a few years later, both of our guys have grown up a little bit, and they meet up again, and things happen. It was a really interesting story. It is only a novella, so I can't really explain much, but I thought it was really, really cool to have queer characters in this type of story where it is drawing on mythology, like a more like historical fantasy setting, and we have two queer main characters. It was really great. I wish I could tell you more about it, but it's so short. It's so worth it. At number 16, we have Sill Girls. This is a YA horror, and we have a few different queer identities in this one. We have a lesbian couple, so a female-female relationship, which are pretty front and center, but we also have an asexual character. This asexual character is kind of the one I'm going to focus on more because of how much that particular character like connected with me. So in this, we are following these three girls in this particular small town where things have been happening for a while. One of our main characters is like, this needs to stop, because her sister went missing on this island. She's kind of trying to figure out what happened. And there is a lot of creepy stuff happening, in particular surrounding this one other girl. It is so hard to describe what this is about without spoiling it. But our asexual character, she is friends with one of these girls, and she's there to like kind of help the other figure out what's happening. But what I really loved about this and this particular type of asexual representation was that we have this girl and she's recently broken up with her boyfriend. She loves her boyfriend so much, and he loves her so much. She figures out that she's asexual, and she's like, well, that means I can't be with him because he's not asexual. And she loves him so much that she wants him to live a full and happy life. Just the fact that you got to see an asexual character that was loved, you know, there's this kind of like affirmation of you can be in a relationship and be asexual, which like I needed to hear at that point. And I think that is a really important thing that people need to know. Some really ignorant people are like, how can you be in a relationship if you're asexual? It's really friggin' annoying when you hear that. Getting to see an asexual character in a relationship in a book and it be explored in a really beautiful way, that was so important for me, and I think it'd be very important to many other people. At number 17, we have It's Been a Pleasure, Noni Blake by Claire Christian. This is a adult contemporary romance. The queer identity in this is bisexual. Our main character, Noni Blake, is a bisexual woman. So this is about Noni Blake, and she is kind of in a rut in her life, and she's kind of like, what is the point of my life? Not in a particularly upsetting way, just in a what am I doing with my life? You know, what is my purpose type thing, and she doesn't know. And she doesn't think that she can find it where she is. So she goes to Europe and she's going to travel around, and it's very much of finding yourself in your 30s. You know, people have this like finding themselves in their late teens and early 20s. Then, you know, when you get to like your 30s and 40s, it's almost like you need to do that again, like to find out who you are as a person in this stage of your life. And that is kind of what Noni is doing, and she's experiencing so many different things because she's trying to put herself out there in regards to not just people but also in regards to life experiences. She meets this guy, they really kind of hit it off. She's gonna go back to Australia. So what's going to happen there? And then this whole like romance thing ensues. I loved their relationship. It was beautiful. There was talk of her being bisexual, and you know, just kind of her like reaffirming that to herself. The point of the story was finding yourself again and figuring out who you are as an adult. At number 18, we have Aftermath by L.A. Witt, I believe. This is a adult contemporary romance, and the main queer identity in this is gay. We are following a male-male relationship. This is kind of set in this small town universe that has many different authored books in this series. You don't have to read them in order, but Aftermath is following this athlete who can no longer be an athlete because he is now disabled after an injury. It is about this man learning to live again after his injury and what this new life entails, because he is now disabled and he needs to create a new life because he can't do the things that he used to love. So this has so much chronic pain rep with our main character, and it hit really hard because I also have chronic pain, and just the emotions that he was feeling, just how fed up he was of being in pain all the time. And he has shut himself off so much because of this injury that he meets this guy that he's really into, but then there are a lot of complicated feelings about that because he's like, well, who would want to be with me now that I can't do these things? But it was such an emotional read, but really important. Then at number 19 is I Think Our Son Is Gay by Okura. This is a manga. It's just a contemporary manga. The main kind of queer identity in this is gay. We are following a gay teen, but we're not really following him, we're following his mother. This is some of the most wholesome manga I've ever read, and it's beautiful and really it's healing a lot of trauma. This woman has picked up on things that her son has been saying lately. Just little things that he lets slip, and then he tries to cover it up by saying, oh no, I didn't mean that, I meant this, slip of the tongue. But it happens a lot. She suspects that her son is gay. The way that she just interacts with her son is so beautiful because she loves him so much. I'm gonna cry because it's so beautiful. She's also she's not pressuring him to come out. He'll say things and then he'll be like, oh no, I didn't mean that, I meant this. And she's like, okay, that's fine. It'd be fine if you meant it the other way too. And then just goes on with a different conversation, and she's so casual about showing her son that she accepts him without any of the pressure. She's trying to make a safe space for him. That's great. I really am gonna cry. It's just, if you ever wanted to heal any of, your teenage trauma. Coming in at number 20 is Upside Down by N.R. Walker. This is a adult contemporary romance, and the main queer identities we're focusing on in this is asexuality. So we have these two guys who do end up entering into a relationship with each other. Both of them are asexual, so they actually meet at this kind of social group all about asexuality. One of these guys is the one running these group sessions, and it's just a bunch of asexual people getting to talk to each other and be like, oh my gosh, the world, right, doesn't understand us, all this kind of thing. This other guy, he goes to this group for the first time because he has an inkling that he might be asexual. I will say there are some moments in this that do feel a little info-dumpy because they are really talking about the asexuality terms and what those terms mean. So it does kind of go into that. So if you need to know what asexuality is and what it means and all of those things. But it was a really great exploration of asexuality and what it means to be in a relationship as an asexual person. But also this relationship was so soft and sweet of these two guys just getting to know each other. And they do it by catching the same bus. Very cute. And at 21 we have Love Me For Who I Am by Kata Konayama. This is a contemporary manga, and the main identity in this is non-binary, but we also have some trans women, gay men, we have some people questioning, we have some lesbians, we have lots of different queer identities in this. And I love it. This has become one of my all-time favorites. This is about this non-binary teenager being very lonely, and they don't have any friends, and this boy from their school realizes this and was like, I think I can help. So this boy brings this teenager to his sister's cafe, and at this cafe there are these like maids that work there, but all of these maids are otaku. That technically means boys that dress like girls for a particular thing, but that's not exactly what is happening here. But that was like the safest way that this person could go about this cafe. But this non-binary teenager is like, no, that's not what I want to do. Like, that's not me. And it was a really, really great explanation of being non-binary and that being different to other gender identities. And what's also beautiful is that this teenager, just by being themselves, helps some of these other teenagers that are working there to realize their own like gender identities, and it helps some of these women be like, yeah, no, this is what I want to do. Like, I do want to like live full-time as a woman, not just when I'm at this cafe. It's like, yes, do that. It's so beautiful. There is a found family at this cafe, and it's so sweet. They are so loving of each other and so supportive of each other, which is really beautiful. I love these people. This group of teenagers being so accepting of one another, being really mature in how they are talking about their fears of like their gender or sexuality and what it means to be queer in this particular world, in particular countries where it's not as accepted as it is in some other countries. They're all just like helping each other find themselves, and it's beautiful, and I'm obsessed with this so much. Please go and read it. Then at number 22, we have Exactly As I Am by Ray White. This is another poetry collection, and the main queer identity here is non-binary. This was such a good poetry collection. I was completely blown away by this. The poetry itself, fascinating. It felt really intricate and like it was saying the most intelligent things. They're all kind of about being non-binary, what it means to be non-binary in this world. It's also like not what it was about. That was just one of the themes that it talked about was, you know, gender identity. They all flowed really well. The entire collection felt very cohesive, and it's really hard to talk about poetry because it's just poetry and it's so good. And just a really interesting way to explore queer topics and queer themes and queer identities, and to have it be done in these beautifully lyrical way. Ooh, so good. Then number 23, we have None of the Above by Travis Alabanza. This is a non-fiction, but it is about Travis's life, and it's about Travis kind of figuring out their gender identity. The main queer identity in this is non-binary, gender fluidity, gay, and just queer, like the term queer. This is about, Travis figuring out who they are and how to be comfortable with who they are, and, you know, figuring out all those little tiny details that kind of make a person who they are. Travis is a comedian, and I first heard about them because they opened for JVN once when they were in Adelaide, and I was like, oh my god, that's amazing, I really like this person. And it took me so long to read this. Like, it was very difficult topics to talk about. It felt really hard-hitting and emotional, but like it wasn't emotional like sad. It was so deeply moving, the way Travis was talking about how to express gender and what even is gender. Do they have to choose a label? Do they have to choose a pronoun? You know, what if those change? You know, what if they look certain ways? Does that then automatically mean that they identify in different ways? And even when you get to the end of the book, it still feels like unclear if there was like a set answer how Travis identifies. And that's totally fine, because you don't have to tick any of these boxes. You know, you can just be whoever you want to be and not put labels on that. And that's okay. And I think that was a really important message. And I think this book deserves way more hype than it's getting. So then the lucky last 24 in 2024 is going to be Ace by Angela Chen. This is a non-fiction all about asexuality. This is such an interesting read because it really reads like one of your typical non-fictions, like explaining things in certain ways, but it's all about asexuality. But this was such an important read. The particular topics that this book talks about in regards to asexuality, so interesting. And the one that always sticks with me is the consent chapter. it really hit hard for me because it was both something I had never thought about before, but was also kind of thinking about at the time that I read it. Also something I was trying to suppress for a really long time, because if I thought about it, then what does that mean? That consent chapter very much talked about that, of, you know, of the fact that like consent can mean something different to people who are asexual. It's not as simple as like a yes or no for us sometimes. There are certain like pressures of society or from a partner or sometimes even from ourselves that make particular situations a bit more of a grey area. And so that was really, really fascinating. A little bit tough to read because emotions, but so, so important. All of the things that this book talked about in regards to asexuality, fascinating topics, and it really gets in depth on what it means to be asexual. And, you know, I think if you're wanting to know more about asexuality, or even if you are asexual, read this. You know, even though I am asexual and I knew I was asexual when I read this, I still learned so much about myself from reading this. And I think the more times I reread it, the more I will find out about my own self. And like I said, whether you're asexual or not, I think you'll get something out of this book, even if it is just more respect towards asexuals, because, ooh, we don't get enough of it. That's for damn sure. But there you go. That is 24 books that I think you should read in 2024 that are all queer. But let me know what you think about some of these books, if you've read them. Do you think their representation was good or not? Or do you know of any better ones? I am always here to read more queer books. If you have any others that you think that I should read, please let me know. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!